people are going in and saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe how expensive groceries are. You have farmers who now are operating in a challenging environment with some of the lowest commodity prices that we've seen in quite a while.
Coming up, we're talking to the CEO of Netafim USA, Mike Hemman, all about their latest developments on their technology and automation platform. The Modern Acre is the podcast for builders in ag who think differently. If you'd like to dig deeper with Tim and I, The Modern Acre, check out the Modern Acre Co-op. It's our membership community. Tim and I are releasing exclusive audio content every week, talking more about the stuff we're into. You can check that out in the link in the show notes. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Corteva Agriscience. Corteva Agriscience is a global pure-play agriculture company that combines industry-leading innovation, high-touch customer engagement, and operational execution to profitably deliver solutions for the world's most pressing agriculture challenges.
So Ty, we're getting into the holiday season. I know you have strong opinions when it comes to the holidays. Everyone knows your take on Halloween decorations at the house. We have differing opinions on Christmas trees. Like, we agree on most stuff, but you're a fake tree guy. I'm a real tree guy. And I just wanted to chat about this on the podcast. Why do you want to be so wasteful and have a plastic tree in your house that you have to store every year?
Is it wasteful though? Because I'm reusing it. I could see your point if I'm buying a new tree every year, but it actually is something that's reused.
I just don't know how that's sourced, where it comes from. So I'm sure it comes from China somewhere. My tree was grown in Oregon, just benefiting the environment. Now it's living in my house.
Oregon?
Dude, that's where all the Christmas trees come from, bro.
What? Okay, so what about the carbon emissions to truck it down here?
It's a noble fir. It smells amazing in my house.
Tim, I'm really happy for you. Frankly, you do you. I'm just out here. I'm not trying to deal with the logistics, the headache, the mess, the cleanup of a real tree. It's, I pop it up. It's pre-lit. The lights are pre-strung. And the stem I don't even have to connect each section of the tree. The lights, it's connected via the stem. I can set my tree up in 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's just gross to me. It's part of the experience is going to the Christmas tree lot, cutting it down. It's a whole day experience for our family time. But we just we can't get on the same page on this one.
I'm super happy for you, Tim. All right, guys, we are excited to jump into this conversation with Mike. We've had Mike on previously. We'll link that episode in the show notes if you want to get more background on him and Netafim. But this week, we bring him on to talk about the latest with their business. And, Netafim is a leader in drip irrigation, but they've been really developing a lot of technology in the automation side of irrigation. And so we get into their platform GrowSphere, which is their digital solution for on-farm automation. And we also talk about their recent program helping offset the cost of some of these solutions working with big corporates. So really a lot in here. I think Mike's perspective on these programs and the automation and where technology is moving on farm was really interesting.
It's a great conversation. So let's jump in with what's top of mind for Mike.
I think what's top of mind for me right now is how quickly technology is changing what we do at the farm gate. And a very specific example, not too long ago, I was over in Salinas talking with one of our customers over there, obviously about irrigation. And we finished our conversation and they just asked a simple question: is there anything else you want to see on the farm? And I said, yeah, when we drove in, is that a laser weeder over there? He said, it absolutely is. Would you like to take a look? I said, absolutely. So we went out and walked behind a laser weeder in the organic field, and I just sat there almost in awe and watched how this machine worked. Then we took a drive around to another block and we looked at a robotic cultivator, And what really struck me was the tractor driver hops out of the cab, walks over, and instead of picking up a torque wrench or a bar or something, he grabs an iPad and starts punching in whatever adjustments he's doing to move things on the shanks of the cultivator. And it just was incredibly amazing to me to step back and think, what world do we live in right now? So I think it's just a huge opportunity and a great time to be in agriculture.
I totally agree. We got to get that, whoever that farmer is, we got to get them on the podcast. I got to talk about all their fun stuff that they're doing. That's awesome to hear. Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but just like, venture capital in ag, I think has left a poor taste in people's mouth around like ag tech, right? Because the returns weren't there immediately in the way that maybe investors had hoped or dreamed. But newsflash, there's still farmers on the ground, still making crops happen. And the technology is still improving, right? So in some cases, some of these, there's like this perception around what's happened within ag tech, but the technology has continued to develop, gotten more efficient, more cost effective, right? So these things are converging, maybe just not in the speed that people expected when they made kind of investments over the past few years. So I think the net is that on farm, people are starting to see some of these things come to fruition, which is really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other factor that goes into this as well is we're in a unique and challenging environment, especially in this state that we live in, specifically around labor. And so as the cost of labor becomes higher and higher, and the challenges with labor, with overtime rules and meal rules and everything else, things that may not have made sense 4 or 5 years ago make a ton of sense today.
Super good point. Yep, that's exactly right. Well, Mike, fill us in. First, I guess, quick introduction. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. You've been on before, but for those who don't know who you are you? And maybe talk a little bit about your role at Netafim.
Yeah, my name's Mike Hemman, and I lead the business in North America for Netafim. Netafim is part of a larger company. We're the precision agriculture arm of a company called Orbia. Orbia is really focused on many different things and aspects that advance life around the world. Specifically, where we come in is within the sector of their business around water and food security. So obviously drip irrigation fits there nicely, but there's also a building and infrastructure part of that business as well, where we work within PVC and climate solutions for resilient construction. There's a polymer solutions area there that's around water delivery for PVC and specialty PVC for water and infrastructure. So that's kind of the water and food security arm. Then there's a decarbonization and energy transition, and that's focused a lot around fluorinated solutions. So that's lower global warming refrigerants, medical propellants. And one of the big areas that we're focused on there is lithium ion batteries. We have material that works and is a precursor for some of the material in lithium ion. And then the last is data and connectivity. So that's really around fiber and bringing network solutions and fiber to everybody and connectivity to everybody, which also connects into ag. Obviously, we know in a lot of rural areas, we need better data connectivity, especially conversation we just finished up on. So we're moving more into ag tech and relying on data and transmission of data to and from the farm. That's a big critical part as well.
Super cool. Well, we want to get into your business and a few updates that you've announced this year. Maybe let's start with a corporate partnership program. I've been chatting with your team a little bit about this for opportunities on our farm, but maybe talk to us about the program and how it works.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. It's a first of its kind program. And really what we're trying to do is link people who are interested in sustainability together. And this really focuses to begin with some large corporations that are focused on trying to improve their sustainability. And generally, because of what we do, this revolves around water. So an example might be a large company like Dr. Pepper or Google, where they have sustainability targets that they're trying to meet. And oftentimes those sustainability targets are related to water. So they may be looking to change their water footprint to get to water neutrality or water positivity. And in addition to all the things that they might do on their own campuses, they're trying to contribute back into the specific area in which they operate. So in the way that we might work with them and connect them with farming is we can find individuals, farmers that may be irrigating in an inefficient manner, and we can help them to move towards a more efficient irrigation system, drip irrigation. But there's obviously a cost in doing that. Through this partnership program, these companies will help offset the cost of installing that irrigation system. And then through automation, we can measure how much water has been saved from moving from an inefficient irrigation flood, let's say, to an efficient irrigation system.
I think it's a super interesting concept, right? And it's like, this is not uncommon in carbon, right? And scope 3 emissions, right? So similar concept where you have these large corporates that have goals that need to figure out how to execute those goals, details. And I think it's really cool to see this around water. So, I mean, in building a program out like this, maybe walk us through, are there any what are the challenges you're facing with the program? What did you learn through the process?
I think one of the things we learned that's different than carbon is environmental and water is local. And so with carbon, I mean, if you're having an impact on emissions in Iowa, it doesn't matter if the individual corporation that's interested in working and incenting for carbon is in California or not, because it's environmental. What we see with water, of course, is it's local. And so I'd say challenge and opportunity is we need to link up companies that can make a difference with their water footprint in a very specific hydrologic region. So for instance, if somebody is in a large farming community and they have a server farm that utilizes a lot of water over a specific aquifer, we can pair them with a farmer that's not too far away over the same aquifer and say, hey, work with this farmer and we will help to maximize the ability of their irrigation system so that there's less water draw from this aquifer. Now, if this is a company that's in New York City, it's pretty tough to go find a farmer that's going to be able to be in that same geography to support them. So I'd say that's probably been the challenge, but also a big opportunity if you're in the right area.
Yeah, essentially kind of matchmaking these large projects that are big consumers of water with a local producer that can make these shifts.
Correct. Absolutely. And I think the other thing is to get people to understand that it's beyond more than just the basics that we might think about with water stewardship. So when we think about less impact on sustainability or a more sustainable way of farming, we automatically go to, we're going to use less water, or we're going to use less groundwater, or we're going to use the water more efficiently, which is at the core is what we're doing. Obviously, that's what drip irrigation does. But I think the things that corporations and the general public don't often understand is there's other benefits as well. So if you think about reduction in CO2 emissions, if you have to pump less water, then you're going to have an impact there, obviously, from a pumping standpoint. If you've got a diesel engine on a pump or something like that, there's less fertilizer usage generally if you're using drip irrigation because you're delivering that fertilizer directly to the roots of the plant. There's a reduction in tillage, certainly, so you don't have to run the tractor through the field as often. So that's a connection that maybe is missed sometimes. And the last is just regenerative agriculture. So think about soil health. Reduction of soil erosion, reduction of compaction, increased soil microbial activity. I think we oftentimes key in on less water, more yield, which is what we're all about, but there's a lot of ancillary benefits as well.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think going back to your comment about the geographic nature of it, I've been involved in renewable projects, right, where there's this discussion of co-location, right? And the projects that have more impact and people can resonate with more are the ones that are tied, it's a wind farm that is tied into the same utility as the production facility people can understand that more logically versus it's a offshore power project. It's just a pure offset play, right? Versus like it's actually co-located. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's more impactful, right? For people to understand, hey, what is going on here and why does it matter?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Mike, let's jump into Growsphere and the kind of the digital side and technology side of the business. Tell us a little bit more about the progress and developments on that side of the business.
Yeah, so Growsphere is, we might call it one of our branches of our business that is focused on irrigation automation. But Growsphere is actually a little bit different than what's been out in the past and what's currently out in the market. So we often think about automation from two fronts. We might think about controlling a system. I can use my phone to turn the irrigation system on or off. Lots of things out there can do that. Or we also might think about monitoring. I can take information that's site specific, whether it's a moisture sensor, a weather station, whatever it might be, and make decisions based off of that. The way we've branded Growsphere is we've actually called it the Growsphere operating system. And we've done that on purpose because what we're really doing is taking all of this in one package and delivering an all-in-one digital farming tool that can take site-specific information. It can control and automate by remotely controlling valves based on time or based on an irrigation schedule, whatever it might be. It can remotely manage fertilizer injection through the drip irrigation system. But what it really does, and what the whole backbone of this is we can take this information and we can process it in the cloud. So now once we have a combination of site-specific information and maybe crowdsourced information about weather or things that you might be able to get about a general geographic area, we now have a series of crop models that we can run all of this data back against, and the crop model will come back to you and say, based on the information that we've collected, this is when we would recommend making an irrigation schedule, how long, the duration, the day. We can take other factors into account around things they may be doing in the field, and it's delivering an irrigation schedule and can actually do this remotely and also do it in an autonomous way if needed.
Ahead of this conversation, I listened to a webinar talking about the Growsphere platform, really cool about the capabilities and functionalities that it has. And just curious on how you kind of like get this in front of growers. Like historically, Netafim has gone through kind of installers, dealer networks, like primarily drip tape. And like, I think as a grower myself, like when you hear Netafim, at least like historically, it's like, oh, that's drip tape company. And like now kind of pivoting into more digital, more technology, like how do you go have those conversations with growers to kind of make these upgrades around automation on their pumping and irrigation infrastructure?
There's a lot of different channels or paths, let's say. So our primary path continues to be our dealer network. That's how we go to market. And one of the things that we've really focused on with Growsphere is making sure that we have the right dealers that are supporting this. And this goes all the way down to a certification program that we are doing with the dealers that are going to be selling the Growsphere operating system. So it's a training program, it's ongoing training, it's making sure that they have the right capability in both understanding how the system works, but servicing it. I mean, anything that's software related, you're going to have a challenge, whether it's a communication challenge, something goes offline, et cetera. And we're operating in remote environments. So we want people that can be able to access this information and service this information in a timely manner. So that's a key part for sure. The other part, of course, is we have a large digital presence. And so obviously we're promoting the system through all of our different social channels and things of that nature. And we get a lot of information back that way where we may connect directly with a farmer and help them to understand if this is the right system for them or not. And there's a whole suite of products within here as well. So you may need the Ferrari or you may need the Chevrolet, depending upon what you're trying to get done with it. But I think the key is making sure that you have the right people in the field. And for sure, it starts with the dealer, but we will also have people that are going to be certified service providers that may not necessarily be a part of a dealership, but can service a specific region to troubleshoot, to install, et cetera.
Mike, could you maybe give us a case study or example or a success story of growers using the Growsphere platform, how kind of that transformed their operation?
Yeah, I think data is one of the key things that farmers look for, but it's also one of the biggest challenges that farmers have. I'm sure you guys have run into the same thing. I hear people all the time say, I have so much data, but I don't know what to do with it. And so I think the key that we've seen is the dashboard that we have and how we can package all of this data into a very simple, here's what you do with this data. And then the really neat part about it is the machine learning part. So it's great to be able to deliver the schedule, but what happens if something goes wrong? So an example might be, actually one of our promotional videos does a good job of explaining this. It shows a farmer, and the farmer's looking at the dashboard, and it says, oh my gosh, look what happened. It looks like the system is offline in this block. We didn't get the irrigation that we were supposed to get because we had a problem with the pump. What do we do? In the promotional video, they say, don't worry about it. We've already noticed that. Machine learning has already determined that, and it's adjusted your future irrigation schedule accordingly. So I think that's the part that is the key part where people have been really, really excited, is this is something that moves quickly on the fly. It's very agile, and it's something that's simple and easy to operate.
Mike, can you talk a little bit about kind of like channel partnerships and how this plays? There's obviously like several companies, automation companies in the space, and growers, sometimes have a mismatch of tools where they have sensors from this company and maybe some other automation equipment over here. Like, do you have the ability to integrate with other companies in the space, or how does this work?
For sure. We started from the ground up, understanding that while we offer sensors and we offer things that can connect to Growsphere to give site-specific information, we understand that it's a space where there's a lot of players out there. So from the very beginning, the basic building block we said and the basic foundation we laid is we will be sensor agnostic. So we can connect to sensors that we offer as well as sensors that other companies offer, and understanding that we're probably not going to be successful forcing a grower into doing it, quote, our way. If they already have systems in place and they already have sensors that they utilize, we'll work with them. We'll work with them to find the right combination that suits their specific requirements. And even within our Growsphere operating system, I mean, if they want to start small, we can start small with, again, I'll call it the Chevrolet, the very simple control or the very simple monitoring. And if over time they say, now I want to move towards this autonomous irrigation and I want to be able to utilize our crop advisor that has the agronomic tools to help them make irrigation scheduling, this can all be built up. It's plug and play. You don't have to scrap what you've already done and start over. It builds upon itself.
This is just a super exciting space. I think that there's so much complexity to automation in irrigation, and there's more and more data coming, and tying these things together to make it easy for growers to use. I think it's just a huge opportunity in the space, and really exciting to see companies like yours innovate in the space and develop these platforms for growers.
I think you're right. There's a huge opportunity here, because the rest of that story was, after the guy with the iPad got back in the tractor and started driving down the field, we went back to the pickups and got ready to leave. And I asked the farmer, I said, let me ask you a question. How do you turn on your irrigation valve? And his answer, I've got a guy that drives out in a pickup truck and he turns it on manually, right? So here's another opportunity. It's a labor-saving opportunity. It's an opportunity to have a dashboard of seeing exactly what you're doing, exactly how much you've irrigated, if you're under-irrigating, over-irrigating. So as farmers, again, get more comfortable with technology, and especially in the state of California, as we have more labor cost and labor restrictions, I really see this as a big emerging space.
Mike, on the webinar, you talked a little bit about crop types. You obviously addressed like tons of different crops in California. Like, is this easier in permanent crops or annual crops, or like where are you seeing kind of the most traction from a crop basis with this kind of automation, this type of control?
I think in general, where we see the initial adoption is in permanent crops, because you're taking equipment and that equipment has to live, if you will, somewhere. And so the fields don't migrate. When you plant a tree, and you don't farm in a different block the next year. If you think about a crop like lettuce, especially short season crop with multiple crops per year, you're moving to different blocks. Now, this is the interesting thing about what we're offering as well is, again, I'll go back to the analogy of the Chevrolet. We will have some pretty simple IoT devices that can be moved. It's not something that has to be sitting somewhere and installed in a permanent basis. It's something that can be moved with the crop to the next field, to the next ranch, whatever you might be.
All right, Mike, we're going to switch gears here, zoom out about just the industry in general. The farm economy has been challenging recently, and we don't know when the light at the end of the tunnel is coming. Like right now, what's your view on the kind of the farm economy, farm market, and where farmers' focus and attention needs to be?
So ag is cyclical, and I've done this long enough. I've seen these cycles a couple of times before. Every cycle is a little bit different. I think I'm a quote guy, so I'm gonna use or paraphrase because I'll probably get it a little bit wrong, but I'll paraphrase a quote from John F. Kennedy. So he has a quote that I think is especially important right now, which says, "The farmer is the only person in our economy who buys at a retail price, sells at a wholesale price, and pays the freight both ways." So this is the challenge that we have right now. While people are going in and saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe how expensive groceries are," you have farmers who now are operating in a challenging environment with some of the lowest commodity prices that we've seen in quite a while. And they're having to pay the same markup and the same inflationary environment that we're in on the inputs, whether it's fertilizer or crop protection or diesel fuel or labor or whatever it might be. So I really think, again, back to the beginning of this conversation, ag tech is going to have to play a bigger and bigger and bigger role going forward. We don't have the luxury of making decisions that are not data driven. And I think the more data that we have, the more accurate decision making we can make, the more efficient we can be with the products that we have, the more yield that we can push on the limited amount of land that we have. That's really where farmers need to be looking at. And oh, by the way, the consumer wants us to do it sustainably as well.
Yeah, I think one of the tailwinds that Netafim has is just the ROI on drip irrigation. It's much more efficient, having those yield benefits. Like, it's a very clear ROI that's well understood. So if growers are kind of looking at their expenses for next year, like going back into furrow flood irrigation is really not on the list. So like drip irrigation is kind of well understood that's a clear ROI. We're actually, Mike, you need to come up to the farm. We're putting in our Netafim drip tape on our garlic this week. We just started planting yesterday, but you need to come up for a tour soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll go one further with water. We obviously know, again, that's pretty easy to quantify. But the next thing is, once you're working and you're doing drip irrigation to conserve water, now you have a delivery method. And so, as you know, now you have a delivery method for fertilizer, and you can utilize the right amount of fertilizer at the right time. You're not wasting it. You're putting it exactly where it needs to go, right to the root of the plant. So I think there's one more area of efficiency that drip irrigation brings in as well.
That's exactly right. Mike, we're going to end with a fun one. What's your food or ag hot take?
I think the hot take I have is that farmers are wasting water. And I think for sure we see this in the state of California. All you've got to do is drive down any major freeway and you see the billboards all over the place that say something along the lines of, "Is farming wasting water?" And I go back to me, it doesn't make sense that people would even think that way. But then I step back, and as you guys say, I zoom out and say, what percentage of the people in this world, this country, and specifically in the state of California are directly tied to agriculture? It's a small percentage of people. So I don't believe that the general public really understands the dynamics of farming, how farmers farm, how farmers utilize water, anything for that matter. And so I go back to something that I've always believed in my career, which is, as agriculturalists that are a very small part of the overall population, it's our responsibility to advocate on behalf of the industry, to make sure that those around us understand that we're not wasting water. We're using water in a super efficient manner. And all you got to do is walk down the road and look at a sprinkler system in the middle of a city that's watering a sidewalk, or there's a broken riser or something like that. You don't see that in a farm. You don't see that with the drip irrigation system. So I'd say that's probably my hot take right now, in an area that I personally take to heart to do everything I can to advocate for the industry.
Couldn't agree more. You're preaching to the choir there of just people's naivety, right, around how farming works, right, and like anyone who thinks that growers are spraying chemicals for the fun of it are misinformed, and anyone that thinks that we're just using water for kicks and giggles, right, doesn't understand farming. And so, yeah, it's super important to get the message out. So thank you for doing that. Mike, as we finish up, how can listeners get in touch and connect with you and Netafim?
The best place is to go to our website at www.netafimusa.com. And when you get on the website, there's a couple different things that might relate back to the conversation that we've had today. So one is there's a whole digital farming section. So if you go into the digital farming section, you can learn anything you want to know about GrowSphere, and it can connect you back into our team. If you have questions, you're looking for a dealer or something like that as well. The other interesting thing is we have a farmer hub on our website. You go to the farmer hub and it'll give you all the information that you might want to know about the corporate partnership program. There's a form that you can fill out that will connect you back with our team so that they can try and do some matchmaking. And the other part we didn't talk much about, but also as a part of the Farmer Hub as well, is we have a whole host of resources around different cost sharing programs, whether those be simple things like Equip or whether those are more comprehensive things like the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, there's a lot of federal, there's a lot of state money that's out there right now, and we're really trying to work to connect farmers with that funding so that they can adopt more efficient irrigation and automation.
So, Ty, what do you think of the conversation with Mike?
I'm just super into this corporate program, right, of being able to fund more of these projects. It's like definitely a win-win solution, right? It's like it helps Netafim sell more of their solution. It helps farmers pay less for this solution, and it helps meet a need of corporates that are trying to meet these goals. And obviously, there's precedent in carbon, and I think it's really cool to see it happen with water. So I think this is probably going to happen. We're going to see more of this in the future, Tim.
Well, hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. If you're at the Hemman conference Tuesday this week, Ty and I are going to both be there, so definitely say hi if you see us.